CMQ investors, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here. This is Chris Franco. So in a recent interview with SumZero, and I will put the link in the description, Mohnish Pabrai stated that he believes that Facebook could be an easy double. Now, I'm not optimistic about that for reasons that I don't think you've heard before. So first, let's watch this brief portion of that interview, and then I'll come back with my thoughts and my insights and just give you a different perspective.
So if I were to look at Facebook, I would say that even with 5 or 10% annual growth, which doesn't really seem like a big leap for them to get to, the stock ought to be a double at current interest rates. So I don't have any issue with saying that, Meta in 2 or 3 years is an easy double. I think that's a reasonable bet.
Over the last 5 years, I've probably allocated tens and tens and tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars, ballpark, on Facebook advertising. And that includes Instagram, anything under the Facebook, which is now the Meta platform's umbrella. As of November 2018, Facebook had more than 6 million active advertisers. Fast forward exactly 2 years, and Facebook had more than 10 million active advertisers. That jump was huge. It was mostly driven by small businesses. One of the reasons small businesses have enjoyed Facebook advertising so much is because with a very little amount of money, they're able to target people that are, likely to behave in a similar way as their past customers. It's an incredibly efficient way to advertise. It allows you to generate demand, whereas Google is aggregating demand. They use Facebook advertising because it works. It's cost efficient, it's measurable, and it just makes sense. Small businesses, Facebook has said this in the earnings calls over the years, that was the important growth lever for their business to flourish. All the big brands were already doing Facebook advertising. Now it's time to how do you get small businesses on, and how do you get them on at scale? Because that's really what's going to carry the momentum of the ad revenue to the next level. And that's what we've seen happen. If you look at Facebook's ad revenue, I think it's pretty clear. Now, with that being said, COVID also accelerated the adoption of Facebook advertising. Mark Zuckerberg mentioned that there are more than 10 million active advertisers across their services, and most of these are small businesses, which otherwise would have had a much harder time moving online and reaching customers during this pandemic. And that's something I'm really proud of. And frankly, that is something to be proud of. Facebook creates a lot of value for small businesses, but the tune has changed since these iOS 14 changes came to light. Sheryl Sandberg on an earnings call said the following: "We've been open about the fact that there were headwinds coming, and we've experienced that in Q3. The biggest is the impact of Apple iOS 14 changes, which has created headwinds for others in the industry, as well as major challenges for small businesses. As a result, we've encountered 2 challenges. One is that the accuracy of our ads targeting decreased, which increased the cost of driving outcomes for our advertisers. And the other is that measuring those outcomes became more difficult." In the video with Mohnish, he talks about how his ads that he sees on Reels are not very well targeted to him.
So I actually find when I look at Reels, it's irritating. The ads are irritating. And actually I actually find the loading of the ads pretty high.
And that is part because of iOS 14 and the inability for Facebook to take certain data that happens offline or off of Facebook and incorporate that into their machine learning models. That in itself makes it more difficult to target advertisements to people who actually want to see those advertisements. Now, because of that, small businesses aren't able to see the results of Facebook ad spend as quickly as they used to, or in some cases, they're not seeing the results anywhere near like they used to be. Now, that's not the case universally. I can't speak for every small business out there, but if you just understand the machine learning underneath Facebook advertising, you'd understand why that is. Now, could Facebook somehow find, a way to fix it for everyone? It's possible. I'm not counting Facebook out, but this is a major headwind. This is a major competitive force operating against Facebook that's going to make it more difficult for Facebook to grow their ad revenue in the way that they have in the past.
My situation when I look at Facebook is that I see a company that revenue is not going anywhere.
And I'm saying that as someone who has benefited from Facebook ad spend over the years, someone who recognizes, that things are changing, and I've been in front of that change for a while now, so it's not like I'm butthurt by these changes. This is just the nature of a lot of different businesses.
Over the long term, the companies of America behave more like biology than they do anything else. And biology, all the individuals die, and so do all the species. It's just a question of time. And that's pretty well what happens in the economy, too. All the things that were really great when I were young have receded enormously, and new things have come up, and some of them started to die. That is what the long-term investment climate is, and it does make it very interesting. Look at what's died. All the department stores, all the newspapers, U.S. Steel, John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil is a pale shadow of his former self. It's just like biology. They have their little time, and then they get clobbered.
I think a lot of people are looking at Facebook stock now and they're for the first time opening up the 10K and seeing, wow, this is a heck of a business. And look, it is. It's a heck of a business. But they're facing challenges now that they've never faced before. Now, there's a lot of talk as well about, well, Instagram Reels, that's going to be their new cash driver. They're going to monetize that. And that's could all be true. And from what I understand, Reels are catching on as you'd expect them to catch on. It's a very addictive format. But Reels are not monetizing in the same way as the feed placements do. And that was the same case with Instagram Stories. It's taken until only recently for those ads to be on the same monetization level in the US as Instagram feed placements. So while Reels could also reach that point of parity, it's not going to happen overnight. I respect Mohnish Pabrai. I value what he has to say. He could be totally right and I could be totally wrong. But I want to offer this perspective because it's one that you don't hear often, because very few individuals have the perspective on Facebook advertising that someone like myself would have. Am I rooting against Facebook? No. I just recognize what these iOS changes have done to Facebook's business model. It's a different ballgame. You could argue, okay, well, Facebook's going to the Metaverse and that's going to be a big thing, or the Oculus is a growing line of business, but just crack open the 10K, look at where most of the revenue comes from, and ask yourself, what is the subjective probability that you will assign to Facebook being able to, kind of crack this code? And you have to bake that into your assessment of Facebook's business and ability for it to grow its business in the way that it has in the past. Now, you could say that, well, the stock is so beaten down that it's only, it's definitely going to go up. And I'm not here to say if it goes up or down. I mean, I don't think Facebook is falling off a cliff, but this idea that it's just this, undervalued, monster, I don't think that's as true as it would have been if this same thing happened, let's call it 3 years ago. That's just the reality. And I'm big into looking at the reality. Now, Facebook can figure it out. It's a big company with a lot of smart people who work there. But I like companies that don't have to deal with these kinds of huge changes that can totally disrupt and frankly erode their competitive advantage. I think Facebook is a company that you could invest in and do perfectly fine, but I do not look at it as a sure thing in the same way that it's being talked about by a lot of people I respect right now online. So that's just my take. It's not financial advice. Do what's best for you. I hope everyone does well. I don't root against anyone and how they make their money in the stock market. Whatever works for you. If it works for you, it works for me. But I'm just sharing you my perspective and hopefully giving you some insights and a perspective rather that you haven't heard. And hopefully you can incorporate it and consider it as you're making your decision about what's best to do with your hard-earned money as you invest in the stock market. So if you'd like to know more about my perspective on Facebook, I uploaded a video recently that also discusses why I think you should maybe not buy the dip. I'll include that link in the description. If you enjoyed this content, I hope you'll subscribe. I hope you'll share it with a friend. Hope you'll let someone know. And I appreciate you watching. For CMQ Investing, my name is Chris Franco. We'll talk soon. If you enjoyed this, make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, punch yourself in the face. Wait, what? I first bought shares of Facebook in 2013. I would have been 12.